Welcome back to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be back with today's guest on team building tips, but first let's hear from our podcast sponsors. We want to thank Violet Defense for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Violet Defense is dedicated to protecting our world from germs by bringing the power of UV disinfection to everyday spaces. Their patented technology enables them to harness the power of the sun to incorporate ultraviolet light into products and environments like never before. Whether you're ready to implement some of their existing products, or if you'd like to explore researching and developing a custom deployment of their technology for your school's athletic department, Violet Defense has the solutions and the experience you need. Go to violetdefense.com for more information about their great products. We also want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Hometown Ticketing is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your school by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they are on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Talk to them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com or call them at 614-981-3589. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. You're going to come away very impressed. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support. You know, it's becoming harder and harder to fund an athletic department these days, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year while creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call them at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. We have a Sideline Interactive indoor scoring table in our gym, and it is fantastic. We use it for games, of course, but we also use it for pep rallies. We use it for signing ceremonies. It's a tremendously versatile tool. So once again, email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. We also want to thank Huddle for their support. At Huddle, we power sports. Over 180,000 teams, including some of the very best in the world, use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools for you to use, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, starting with club and youth programs all the way through high school and colleges. And even professional teams are using Huddle to help their athletes play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the teams you're trying to get to recruit your kids. You want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic department. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the student athletes who really love your program. It gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to access the parent and student athlete opinions, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Today, we're truly visiting with an old friend, Mike Garvey. Mike is a certified master athletic administrator. He's a longtime athletic director in the state of Michigan, recently retired, but still very active at the state and the national level. And Mike and I had a chance to work together for a few years on the NIAAA's certification committee. Mike Garvey, welcome to the podcast.
Jake, thanks for inviting me. It was good to catch up with you when we were out in Denver and actually kind of solicit this invitation.
No, yeah, and again, as I shared at Denver, this is an interview that should have been on much sooner, but we're glad to have you as part of our second group of 150 ADs. So closing in on 300 interviews. So
it's a thrill. It's a thrill.
Mike, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that 5-minute bio, where you were born, where you grew up, where you went to school, and kind of how your life led you to this path, this career of being an educational athletic director.
Well, this is not a normal answer. When I was just about ready to start 9th grade, my dad said, "I think we're going to move." And we moved to Geneva, Switzerland, which was quite a move. So I ended up going to Collège du Le Mans for 1 year in my 9th grade year, and then 10th, 11th, and 12th, the Swiss government decided they weren't going to renew work permits, so they moved all the Chrysler headquarters to England. And ironically, after my sophomore year, we moved to Coventry, which is 100 miles north of London. And I can honestly say I traveled 100 miles to and 100 miles from school every day. And that's where I got my start in sports, got real involved. Was on the swim team for a year, played soccer for a year, played rugby for a year, baseball for 3, and wrestled for a couple. Kind of tried wrestling in college, but it just wasn't for me. And then I got a job as a resident advisor in the dorm, which is 3-room and board. So I kind of took that and ran with it simply because I was paying my own way to get through college. Student taught in a small little town in Lawton where I'm sitting today. Met the best girl in the world, and luckily she said yes when I proposed to her, and then student taught here. I actually student taught in Lawton, had never heard of Lawton before, so I student taught, and it was off and running, and here we go.
For our listeners who might not be familiar, with Mike, again, he's very decorated in our profession, and received a lot of awards. But as you know, Mike, those don't happen overnight. Take us back to maybe some of those early years and some of the challenges, or maybe some of the excitement that happened, when you had that first athletic director's job.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because my first AD job was in Lawton when I was teaching here. And it was difficult rising through the ranks because these coaches went from my brothers and sisters to somebody that I was supervising, somebody that I was evaluating. And it created some difficulty. Some of it was wonderful because we had talked, so many of us were such close friends. We had talked about the previous athletic director, and he was wonderful. But maybe some things we would want to see, and so it was a challenge, but it was certainly worth a while. And again, Lawton is my wife's hometown, has become my hometown. And so from there, it came time when I decided I wanted to venture off into a bigger school. When I was still at Lawton, when I resigned, I think I had to resign like 5 or 6 positions, from from a class advisor to wrestling coach to JV softball, or not JV softball, JV football, teaching, athletic administration. I was my own secretary. So when it was time to move, it was time to move to a bigger school and work on and a different approach to it.
Yeah, I think the people that have never got a chance to work at those smaller schools where you wear so many different hats, really great training for when you become just an AD, and you have that assistant, administrative assistant, you have that assistant AD sometimes to work with you. Yeah, great stuff. For listeners, we're visiting with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, longtime AD in the state of Michigan, and a member of the NIAAA Certification Committee. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with some more. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Huddle for their support of the Educational AD Podcast. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. Over 180,000 teams, including some of the best in the world, use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better. Huddle's the complete performance platform. They have online tools, mobile and desktop apps, smart cameras like the Huddle Focus. Of course, there's analytics and a whole lot more. Huddle's also built for every level of play, from club and youth teams up through high schools and colleges, and even professional teams use Huddle to help their athletes and their teams play better. You're in pretty good company with over 6 million users, including your student athletes, a lot of their parents, and the coaches of the college and university teams that you're trying to get to recruit your kids. If you want to find out more about what Huddle can do for you and how your school can become a Huddle school, go to huddle.com and talk to their professionals. Remember, at Huddle, we power sports. We're back visiting with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator. Mike, in our profession, we always talk about the importance of leadership and particularly mentorship. So who are some of the mentors that you had growing up, even in your career? Who's helped you along the way?
Well, I think if you start personally, that probably 3 would come out right away that were just totally personal. One was having grown up as a Catholic and following the teachings of Jesus. That was always something, because it helped me know what the right thing to do was in most instances. And my dad, who was so important to me, and I lost him at a fairly early age. But just following him, and then of course my wife. Jennifer is the best, and I always wanted to be able to come home and tell her good things, and I didn't want to tell her that I did something stupid. So she was and is the best. I think once we got into teaching and coaching and athletic administration, 2 people stand out. One was Don Penza, who was my first mentor, and he was a football coach that I worked with at Marion Central Catholic in Woodstock, Illinois. And one of the neat things about Don is I remember reading a Frank Leahy quote, which means we're taking it way back. Frank said, Coach Leahy said that Don was the best captain he had ever had. So I was very, very willing to let him be a mentor, and follow his lead. He just, again, did the right things, demanded a lot of his coaches and his players, which I think is still crucial for all of us. And then many of the people listening to this will know my good buddy Fred Smith, and I dare anybody to tell him no. It was like, would you like to teach this? Oh, let me rephrase that. When can we get you to teach that? But we've remained very, very good friends. Just talked to him a little while ago, and just following. And he's the one that dragged me, pushed me, whatever terminology anybody wants to use. But he's the one that got me involved with Michigan IAAA. And then he said, "What the heck, you're doing well, let's go national." And so I think that Fred, it was crucial. And I also think that I know he filled out the nomination form for the Athletic Directors Hall of Fame that I was fortunate enough to be inducted into this past winter.
No, absolutely. And congratulations on that. Very well deserved. Talk again, we have a lot of younger ADs that listen to the podcast, and I think it's important for them to hear about that journey that you and I have both been on, through the certification program. And again, we both had the privilege of serving on the committee. So how did you make that jump from being involved, at the state level to, getting on a national committee and teaching at the national level? Tell our younger ADs how that works.
Well, I actually learned it earlier because I had been in the leadership of the Wrestling Coaches Association. I had been involved with coaches who said, "Come on, Garvey, let's go." So I had served Michigan Wrestling Association as the secretary, the treasurer, the vice president, the president, the past president. And that was a 2-year at each position rotation. So by the time I jumped into the athletic director's mode, I was told by many people in Michigan, the IAAA, Michigan IAAA is absolutely amazing. And they said, get involved, learn some things. And I found that just sitting around drinking a Coca-Cola, talking to some of these veterans was worth the price of a lot of classes that you could take. And so, and once you get involved and your name is known because you're in that circle of people that want to talk about things and people that want to do things, the pressure or the invitation is there to, come on, let's go. Let's get involved. We need you to run this committee. We need you to serve in this position. And so when I got to the Michigan IAAA, I followed my suit where I was elected and was 1 year as the recording secretary and 1 year as the first vice president, second vice president, past president, president. So it's just a matter of putting yourself out there and letting it know that you're willing to help. And I think in our world, in athletic world, the definition of a volunteer is a sucker, and then you bleed them. And so I think, a lot of us, yourself and myself included, just put that sign on our head and said, sucker, take what you need. And so I think it's a great message, and it also sets you up when it comes later in life when you're really, talking about leadership in this and that, and you can say servant leadership because that's what we do. So
absolutely. I don't think I've heard it explained any better. Putting yourself out there, letting people know that you're willing to help. And then at the same time, accepting those opportunities when they come your way, great stuff. And again, I remember great fondness those years that you and I were on certification together. I think we did a lot of good work, and I know we also had a lot of fun. So
that's the key. And I think that's the key through our lives. I used to tell the coaches, it's like that old magnet on the refrigerator that says, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Well, when it comes to the coaches and the athletic director, we're mama. Mm-hmm. And if we're not happy, we have to show it. And so I think that's a big part of, having worked in smaller schools. You're not just necessarily blessed with 85 football players and 47 wrestlers and 200 baseball players. It's just, you have to make it fun so that kids come back and they bring their friends with them.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be fun. For our listeners, once again, we're visiting with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator and recent inductee into the NIAAA Hall of Fame. So please stay with us. We'll be back with some more wisdom. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive for their support of the podcast. It's getting harder and harder to fund an athletic department, but Sideline Interactive's indoor scoring tables and video boards can generate $10,000 or more every year, while also creating excitement in the gym and the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. Go to sidelineinteractive.com or call them at 832-786-0302 to schedule a live web demo and see their tables and boards in action. You can also email them at sales@sidelineinteractive.com for more information. That's sales@sidelineinteractive.com. I promise you, you will be very impressed with their product as well as their customer service. We're back with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator from the state of Michigan. Mike, one of the things we try to do at the podcast is this idea of sharing best practices. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What are some things that maybe you did at your school over the years that you're particularly proud of, or maybe you saw at another school? What are some best practices you can share with us?
Well, Jake, as I had mentioned earlier, getting kids out for sports isn't necessarily just a gimme. We have to work at it. And a couple of the things that I feel really good about is I created an award, basically allowed kids to graduate with athletic honors. Whereas, they could have a 4.0 grade point, they'd get the chords, they could do this and they'd get that. But there was never anything in the schools where I was where that was specifically related, and there was a graduation recognition of kids who had excelled in the sports world, in the athletic world. So I created the opportunity for kids to graduate with athletic honors, and when I did so, I involved students because I wanted them to understand what we were doing. I wanted them to buy in, and I wanted them to realize that this was all about them. So we had so many criteria. We had a grade point criteria. We had points that were awarded for being a member of a freshman team, a junior varsity team, a varsity team. Points awarded for all conference, all state. Points negated for being kicked out of a game. And points were deducted when they violated the athletic code. And that was a great thing. And what we did at the end of the school year is we'd have an assembly, and we would introduce these student athletes. And I would say, this is who you want to be like. These are the role models in our school that have set themselves up just to do the right thing and to make your school proud. That was one of the things that sticks out with me, having served many years in the athletic world. The other one was, I remember when I was at my last stop at Marion Central, I was at a position where I had 0 coaches on staff, not a one. And people now will talk about 20%, 30%. I had 0. And so I felt a disconnect. I felt like the students were on one side, the coaches were on the other side, and they weren't really able to connect. I couldn't walk down the hall like I could as a teacher coach. We didn't have that option. So we created a captain's plan where it was funny when I set it up. I said to the coaches, here's what I want to do. Here's what I need you to do. Nothing. I said, all I want you to do is buy in and say, okay, I will not let a kid be a captain unless they do this. And so we had, probably 80 kids in a school of 300 who would come to that. And when we say a school of 300, let's not forget that 75, 80 of them were ready to graduate, weren't eligible. And so it wasn't something where kids were guaranteed to be captains, but it was something that if they didn't do it, they were not going to be captains. And we professed, and I believe strongly, that you can lead whether you're going to get that captain's part or not. And so leadership, and I used to tell the kids, I defy you to put on your resume leadership positions and have somebody interview you say, boy, that was a bad thing. But that just doesn't happen. So we gave them the opportunity to be leaders. And it was nice to see 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 captains on any given team. So I guess if I was picking out a couple highlights, those are two I'd pick.
And again, those are two great examples that directly impact students while they're in school, as well as later on. You talk about putting that on your resume or on a job application, the leadership or the sports accolades, great stuff. We'll do this again at the end of the podcast, but Mike, if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick the brain of a veteran master athletic administrator, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
I think the best way is email. And do you want me to just say my email or?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's Garvman, GARVMAN 112 at gmail.com. So it's Garvman 112 at gmail.com.
Garvman, I love it. We're visiting with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator, Hall of Fame AD. We're going to be back with some more. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We also want to thank Wall of Fame by Vital Signs for their support of the podcast. Wall of Fame is on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. They provide a variety of interactive touchscreen video consoles, along with an extensive library of templates to make it easier than ever to recognize the athletic achievements of your students, both past and present. For more ideas on how to showcase your school's diverse history, along with your proudest moments, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com or learn more and get started with your own digital Wall of Fame tribute. Call them at 614-981-3589, or you can email them at sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. That's sales@vitalsignswalloffame.com. You will be very impressed. Welcome back to our interview with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator. Mike, you and I, again, we're both retired ADs, similar age, came up, in the same years. I remember back 100 years ago when I was in high school, it was very common for one of my coaches to say something like, "Come on, Jake, you got to suck it up," or "Come on, Jake, you got to be tougher." I think as the years have gone on, we've figured out maybe better ways to try to get our athletes to perform better. But toughness is such a part of athletics and of life. So my question to you is, how can an athletic director or a coach help kids to become tough while also being aware of and sensitive to the very real social, emotional challenges that a Generation Z kid experiences these days? Do you have any advice for us?
I think that's an interesting concept and something that I don't think is that complex, because when you say coach, the word love comes into my mind. I don't think you can coach kids. Back when you and I grew up, Jake, if coach said run through the wall, we'd try. And just because we were scared. And we sure as shooting didn't want to go home and tell dad, well, big dummy tried to tell me to go through. No, we didn't do that. So I understand that. But I think that you can still coach kids hard, coach them tough, put them in situations that are so difficult that they have to put everything they have into it to come out successful. And that doesn't just mean in competition. It means in practice when we run drills, make the competitive part of the drills to where kids either are victorious or they're not. And if they are, there's a reward. If they're not, there's a consequence. I don't mean, something crazy, but just enough to where they say, son of a gun, I'm going to give it a little more the next time. So I feel as though we can do that through pushing kids. And when you started this whole question, you said, "In life is tough." Well, my gosh, it is. You and I have both been through some really tough situations. And we've come out on top simply because of, in my mind, a lot of it was taught to us when we were in sports and when coaches said, "Jake, that's not good enough. Jake, you got to go." Or "Mike, come on, let's see a little more out of it." So I would say that if we get kids to work their tails off, they're not going to do that just for kicks and giggles. We have to make it fun. We have to work their tails off. We have to teach them that there's a reward, and we have to teach them how it carries over into life. And I think an athletic director or a coach walking around with his or her head drooped and, oh, this is so tough, just isn't going to work. I think we rise above all of it. And as a coach, especially, because, as much as we love our kids, the coaches get to deal with them more than us and more directly than us. And so coaches have to be firm. They have to set expectations. What's the saying is if coach isn't getting on you, maybe he or she doesn't care. And so um, I wanted all of my coaches and I wanted myself as a coach to care like crazy. And we both know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Not that that quote's ever been used more before. And I think if we do that, if we love them up and if we push them and teach them why, kids are smarter than they were back in the day, where you need to teach them why, because there's more to their thinking process than there was ours. Ours was fear, and and fear doesn't work as much anymore. So hopefully that answers what you were looking for. That's what I was thinking.
I really, I love how when I ask you a question about how can we coach toughness, you use the word love. I think about 8 or 9 times, and you're so right. It's that cliche. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. It's a cliche because it's true, but very, very good stuff. Mike, this has been great catching up with you a little bit more and hearing a little bit more about your story. I knew some of it, but not all of it. But we're not done yet. We always like to wrap up with what we call the Athletic Director's Toolbox, which is sponsored by Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack. We're going to take a quick break and hear from Athletic Surveys. But when we come back, we're going to find out what Mike Garvey, a Hall of Fame athletic director, is going to put into his athletic director toolbox for a new AD. Please stay with us. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We really want to thank Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack for sponsoring the Athletic Director Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire athletic department. Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack also connects you with the 95% of the parents and the players who really love your program. And it gives them a voice to help demonstrate the importance that a positive athletic experience has for them. Go to athleticsurveys.com and check out their testimonials, and then give them a call at 1-800-738-6466, or you can email them at info@athleticsurveys.com to get started. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your parents or your student athletes, you're really missing out. Talk to the pros at Athletic Surveys by Lifetrack and let them help you take your athletic department from good to great. Hey, we're back with Mike Garvey, Certified Master Athletic Administrator. Mike, as I said, it's been great talking to you a little bit more, but right now I want to find out what Mike Garvey would put into a brand new athletic director's toolbox. What do you got for us?
First thing I would say is be there. Kids don't get impressed by the athletic director that's got the name and doesn't do his job or her job. Be there. And I don't mean just be at contests. Be in the hallway, be in the lunchroom. Get around and see the kids and let them know who you are, let them know what you stand for, and let them know, again, I know it sounds like that's from small school, but let them know how much fun it is to be involved in your program. So being there, I think, is huge. I think the other thing is servant leader. I think it's totally okay to tell a kid, hey, I'm here, I work for you, you're not my boss, but I work for you, and I'm here to help you. So that servant leadership, I mean, if you and I got started on that, we'd be here till next Tuesday. But I think that if you're a servant leader and you're there, those are two of the biggest things that that can be helpful for you as an athletic director. The other thing is, I would say, try to be innovative. Try to step outside the box. And I heard it so many times when I would switch schools. Well, that's not the way we do it here. Well, I know. That's why I'm here. So try to make some changes. Like I said, when I threw that captain's clinic in, the coaches were like, "What the heck is coming at me?" I don't have to do anything. So they were a little more receptive. Same thing when we did the graduating with athletic honors. So I would say, try to step outside the box that's been created by your predecessor. Anybody can, read a script and follow it. But I think that somebody that really wants to step up is somebody that makes changes. And on top of that, I think get to your state conference, get to your state association, get involved. And shoot, maybe someday Jake Von Scher is going to be calling you and saying, "Hey, you want to sit around and shoot the breeze and be on one of my podcasts?" So that's what I would think.
All right. I don't know about that last one, but you definitely get involved. Yeah. Mike, again, thanks so much for being on the podcast. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out and pick your brain, and folks that are listening, what a resource you have here, how do they get in touch with you, Mike?
GARVMAN 112 at gmail.com. So it's garvman112 at gmail.com.
Garvman.
I'm an old retired dude, so I can check my email pretty much most of the time. I am in the Eastern time zone now, for those of you out on the West Coast.
So that was garvman112 at gmail.com.
Yes.
Mike, thanks so much for being on the podcast. And anytime you want to come down and visit in Florida, we've got a space ready for you and your wife.
We'll be there and get the golf courses ready.
Okay, sounds good. For our listeners, remember the Zoom recordings of all these interviews are uploaded to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We appreciate you listening today. Come back again next time for another episode of the Educational AD and Team Building Tips. Have a great day. And before we go, we want to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. You can learn more about what Hometown Ticketing can do for you and your program by going to hometownticketing.com. Hometown Ticketing, simple and easy online ticketing.